In 680 AD, on Ashoura, the 10th day of the holy month of Muharram, Husayn Ibn Ali, the grandson of Prophet Muhammad and the third Imam of Shia Muslims, was martyred in the desert of Karbala, located in contemporary Iraq. Since then, Shia Muslims commemorate his martyrdom every year. This year, as the coronavirus pandemic rages on, governments and health authorities are cautioning people to commemorate the event with strict health guidelines. In Bahrain, however, Shia Muslims have not been cautioned but banned from holding Muharram mourning rituals on the surface for the pandemic. But critics say the truth is far beneath the surface.
الحادث اللي حدث مؤلم جدا لجميع السعوديين.
Restrictive measures increased in Bahrain in the run-up to Muharram this year, some of them under the pretext of preventing COVID-19 from spreading. The major organizers of mourning rituals in Bahrain have reportedly been summoned and threatened by the authorities. Some religious centers have been warned that in case of hosting Muharram rituals, they will be fined and shut down for 3 years. The security apparatus has also had some local media publish articles against organizing mourning ceremonies. Bahrain's most prominent Shia cleric, Ayatollah Sheikh Isa Qasim, has condemned Manama's decision to ban mourning ceremonies in Muharram, deploring the double standard that the ban has been introduced while business centers, markets, pools, and sports clubs have reopened in Bahrain.
Well, it's obviously hypocrisy to a greater extent, but at the same time you can see that they are playing to their masters. Okay, the things that please their masters is having their pools and gambling venues and all of those kinds of things, but also they want to make sure that the economy does not suffer.
The discrepancy between policies shows how Manama is using the pandemic as an excuse to target Shia rituals during Muharram. The Al Khalifa regime is accused of systematically discriminating against the country's Shiite community, which accounts for the majority of Bahrain's population. Discriminatory practices affect Shia Muslims across a vast array of issues, including employment, freedom of expression, and political rights. The Shia community faces exclusion from the military and security apparatuses, the arbitrary revocation of Bahraini citizenship, and the denial of medical care for prisoners.
Their human rights are violated basically in every form, whether it be education, their employment rights, whether it be the rights to, secure, best standard of life. That's what they've done. They've treated the Shia Muslims in Bahrain as second-class citizens. They've made sure that they don't have any rights to the best standard of anything. The reason why they're doing that, is pretty clear, is that, if they gave them all the rights and stuff.
The Bahraini monarchy has historically used alleged ties between Shia opposition groups and Iran to justify the systematic denial of political rights. As demonstrated by the Bandargate scandal, the public revelation of a report on the regime's plan to marginalize the Shiite community, the Al Khalifa have also pursued a policy of Sunniization of the Bahraini population. In a nutshell, Shia identity has proved to be the prime target of the Al Khalifa regime.
Sunnization, the same thing is take away the rights of the Shia Muslims, make sure they don't stand up for their rights, they never gather and they forget their past. We cannot forget the past. 1443 years of Imam Husayn. We do not forget that in 1 second. This is our life. This is who we are. We stand up against oppression. We make sure we stand up against tyranny of all sorts. And we make sure we stand for the oppressed, not against the oppressed.
While holding Shia festivals and rituals is technically permitted in Bahrain, police forces have consistently harassed Shia Muslims during these events. Last year, during the month of Muharram, at least 20 religious leaders were summoned regarding the content of their sermons and prayers, and it restricted Ashoura ritual processions.
The Shia Muslims will not feel happy by suppressing their needs, suppressing their rights. What they're trying to do is they're actually kind of turning them away from all of these things, either so they can leave the country and leave it to the to the minority, which is the Sunni Muslims of Bahrain. But we know why they're doing this. They're doing this because they want them to suffer as much as they possibly can, and it is oppression.
The coronavirus pandemic has recently contributed to new limitations on religious freedom. On the 26th of August 2020, a few days before Ashoura, the Bahraini regime's Jafariya Endowment Directorate imposed restrictions specifically aimed at targeting Shia worshippers and their congregation halls, the matams. ACLED religion data shed light on the long-term consequences of these restrictions and the repression of Shia religious practices. Between January and March 2021, ACLED religion records 6 judicial harassment events targeting various Shia practices, including Ashura-related celebrations, the call to prayer, adhan, and other unspecified rituals.
I know we probably have a few more questions related to this, but if you see what happened in Iran, it was very similar before the revolution, because what happened here was that we were trying to, Reza Pahlavi was trying to do the same thing, bringing in, those kind of, suppressing the houses, making sure that the houses were removed, that people were, by oppressing them. He was trying to remove aspects of the faith that actually strengthens the generations to come.
Another major anti-Shia trend is the repression of Shia religious practices and beliefs in prison. Targeting of Shia clerics in prison reflects the systematic sectarian discrimination that Shia prisoners experience in Bahrain, a trend exemplified by the attack on Sheikh Zuhair Ashur in Jah prison on March 14, and by the medical mistreatment of Sayyid Kamal Hashemi on March 30th. In August 2020, around 500 political prisoners in buildings 13 and 14 of Jah prison went on a hunger strike to protest the Bahraini regime's ban on religious rituals, in particular the Ashura rituals.
Al Khalifa is no different to the Saudi regime. They are, they bypass one another, but they're doing exactly the same thing, which is suppressing the Shia Muslims and preventing them from having any form of rights, to keep them away from feeling or gaining strength. Gatherings means gathering of numbers. When numbers get together, they get told, they're lectured to become strong, like Imam Husayn. They're told to become pious. They become strong to stand up against oppression, against the tyrannies, and they're educated. The reason why these rituals and things are being pushed away from them is so that there are no gatherings, there are no lectures, there are no kind of people to tell them, how and what kind of rights they should be fighting against.
Every year, discrimination against Shia Muslims in Bahrain increases during Muharram. However, the discrimination and suppression of religious events have taken on a new form over the past 2 years, because the authorities can use the pandemic as an excuse for their actions. Some even say that Manama will intentionally increase PCR testing, as it did last year, so that the number of cases would be higher after Muharram, in order to use the ceremonies as a scapegoat.